Former Trinidad and Tobago World Boxing Association lightweight champion Claude Noel passed away on Sunday at the age of 74 at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex. Now, he was ailing for a number of years with diabetes. Since his passing, he's been hailed a legend and a patriot. Well, we're going to get into that discussion. Those particular words and those references somehow are touted many a times. They seem to be very popular when somebody has passed on. But during their lifetime, do we actually celebrate and lift up these heroes that have made a contribution to TNT, putting TNT on the map? Well, this morning I'm joined by sports journalist and host of WESN's The Face of Sports, Mr. Andre Errol Baptiste. Good morning, Andre.
Good morning, Ketan, and good morning to all your viewers.
Well, Andre, thank you for joining me. I know you're accustomed to sitting in this seat and speaking to the person in Zoom on the other end, but we're switching roles this morning.
Okay.
Yeah. Andre, your reactions to the news of the passing of Claude Noel?
I think it's sad that he's gone, obviously, but I totally agree with the sentiment that you've expressed, that only on his passing we are hearing all these praises bestowed on him. I know, for instance, we at WESN, when he was going through his difficult periods, we had several interviews highlighting the problems he was experiencing. Nobody else seemed to be that interested, not the authorities, not even some of the other media. But now that he's gone on to a better place, everyone is talking about him. But it's common, Ketan. It's common in sports, it's probably common in culture, and it's common in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, that when someone has died, then we remember all the good that they have done. And that's terrible, but that's just how we are, all of us, it appears.
Mm-hmm. Well, a release from the TNT Boxing Association in a tribute to Claude Noel on Tuesday, my apologies, referred to him as a legend. That being said, we call these individuals legends following their demise, but during their lifetime, with reference to Mr. Noel, are they treated as though they are legends?
That very same body you just spoke about, Noel will tell you, Claude Noel will tell you that he didn't hear from them. We tried to reach out to them. They never even spoke about Claude Noel. They were not interested. They are interested in getting funding from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. They're interested in sending young boxers on. We have seen Ketan, for instance, recently Michael Alexander got injured. And now that he's injured and he's not getting any funding, they're not interested in him. So they're only interested in the boxers when they get money, like many of the NGOs. So I call that false news from them and just trying to piggyback on Claude Noel, because I'm sure they cannot tell anyone when last they even visited Claude Noel.
And another reference comes from the Minister of Sports, saying that his legacy will live on. He's made his contributions to Trinidad and Tobago will always be remembered. Let's first start by asking, from your view as an individual who has always followed sports, what was Claude Noel's contribution to Trinidad and Tobago, just so we have an understanding?
Sure. Claude Noel in 1981, Ketan, would have been the first Trinidad and Tobago boxer to win a world title. There have been 3 previous attempts. He was the first one to do it. Leslie Tiger Stewart went on after him and also won a title, but he won our first title. And I think that's always important. Hazley Crawford won our first 100 meters title, gold medal, I should say, and in the Olympic Games. So your first is normally should get great acclamation. I know a highway was named after him. He was given a house by the government too as well in Malabar. So they did that part. Social development, I understand, made efforts to work with him. Of course, they may have had some problems in dealing with the family at that time, but nevertheless, efforts were made. I can't begrudge them for making the efforts. I can say that they should have made much more sterner efforts, meaning that when they tried and they didn't get onto him, don't just give up. And don't just hold checks and keep checks there month after month after month until they get stale dated because he didn't come and collect. Because not only was he suffering from diabetes, he lost his eyesight, eventually had to have one of his legs amputated as well. So he was really suffering. Mm-hmm. And I think it hasn't been stated what was the condition why he died, but given all the difficulties he had, all the trauma he had, his heart must have been in a terrible state. That's really tough for anyone. And I think a lot more could be done, Ketan Shaw, for our former athletes, particularly those who retire. Even if the NGOs are like the Boxing Association, Boxing Board are not interested, then other efforts have to be made. Most of these guys and ladies don't have pension plans. They don't have health and sickness funding. They don't have these things. So therefore, they have to fend off on their own. Or if they make sure they earn enough money, like our cricketers right now playing T20 cricket, put aside money for themselves. Think about themselves, Ketan. That's what they've got to do now.
Well, we've thought a lot about ourselves, but is the Special Achievers Grant enough? I know you said that many of these sporting heroes, they don't have pension plans. So assistance from the government becomes necessary. But is it just enough to award them a house, to name a highway after them, when they can't actually live?
No, it's definitely not enough. And I think something has to happen in terms of that. But again, Ketan, I think the main protagonists have to be the NGOs. We can't expect the athletes to do it on their own. They need support from the NGOs. But the NGOs, most of the times in this country, Ketan, the NGOs are only interested when they get funding. So if they're not going to get some of the money, coaches have given up on players. If they don't get paid, they're not interested unless they get paid. So they're not in it for the heart, they're in it for the pocket. And that's the problem.
Now, sporting heroes are celebrated more now. Is Mr. Noel a hero more so now that he's moved on than when he actually was alive, based off of everything that we've said this morning?
Correct. When he was alive, people would recall not his success, but his failures. He's a human, like all of us, he would have failures. And people would quicker piggyback on his failures than remember his success and talk about what he did wrong rather than what he did right. And that's how we are. We are like that in Trinidad and Tobago. We look to pull down people rather than to be positive. Most of our sportsmen and sportswomen, particularly the younger generation, or when I say the younger generation, those in the 30s and the 20s, they realize that for themselves. And they ignore many of the people and they continue to do it on their own because they realize that's the society we are in.
Could we utilize these legends while they're alive as well to pass on their knowledge, their skills, help young people develop their own skills and get more into sports?
Well, Ketan, that was being tried. I would tell you that I want to say maybe about 15 years ago, maybe less, but maybe about 12, 15 years ago. I know that Claude Noel was trying to assist boxing in Umera Road in Arima, and he was stopped, not given an opportunity because there was some at the time that felt he was too old. Why should he be contributing? And these were people at the time who would have been involved, high officials in the ministry at that time, and others who felt that Claude Noel had no contribution. They never boxed. And they felt they knew more than Claude Noel. He got frustrated. There was almost one report that he was kicked out of an office in the ministry. There was a report. He himself said so. Others have denied it at the time. So all of that would have frustrated him. Mm-hmm. And definitely, so therefore, while he wanted to make a contribution, his contribution was ignored.
So it takes us into a deeper conversation, Andre, in your experience from what you've seen. Is it that, and for an individual who has a passion and a love for sports, is sports taken seriously here in Trinidad and Tobago?
No, it's not. I think, Ketan, most of the persons who follow sport feel it's just entertainment. They don't understand the value of sport. And now, maybe because of T20 cricket and some football success, they're beginning to realize, wait, my son or my daughter can make a career in this. This can actually earn them money. And that's because in most of our sports, and I'm going to call netball as an example, basically netball, basketball, and most of these persons who represent Trinidad and Tobago at the Olympics, they don't earn money. They have to earn their money on their own. So a lot of people look at it as a part-time thing and that the government is supporting you with a subvention. So you need to do good. They don't understand that these athletes have to, most of the time, put out the money on their own and then get reimbursed if they're lucky. So yes, sport is not taken seriously in this country. We only use it to celebrate and jump up and dance and be happy. But the next day we move on and we forget the sportsman and the sportswoman.
Mm-hmm. So then, in the most respectful manner, I'm sorry that I actually have to ask this question, but though he was successful in his career, that is Claude Noel, given everything that he would have faced, the video circulating recently that was from over a year ago, that's still, even if it's a year ago, the main fact is he went through a lot. Is it that this is also going to be a deterrent for young people getting into sports, saying, I don't want to go through this, even though I may be successful in my career now? It doesn't mean that down the line, I would have every opportunity to live or survive.
Yes and no. Yes, from the point of view that if you want to get into boxing, you've got to realize you're not going to earn much money in boxing unless you turn professional. And if you turn professional, you've got to make sure you have a good management team around you. In other sports like cricket and football, where you earn money on your own, you've got to understand you need to put aside money on your own. But in all cases, sportsmen and sportswomen need to get proper management advice. I know the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, when Brian Lewis was there, they were emphasizing that training was given to our sportsmen and sportswomen now so that they earn money. If you go back and you like cricket, if you go back into time now and look at some of the former cricketers, they're all suffering. And then these former cricketers are criticizing the young guys now for deciding to play T20 cricket and earn money so that when the next 10, 15 years when they retire, they will have something to live on. Yeah. We've got to understand that, and a lot of people don't.
Is there a possibility to actually balance that, Andre, the passion and the love for the game without, with also trying to balance the commercialization of the game? You know, T20 cricket has often been said, it's not true cricket. Test cricket is real cricket, ODI more so, but T20 cricket is just go out, slap a ball for six and earn $100,000. Is it that there needs to be greater balance?
There needs to be greater balance, but then everybody needs to work together. So cricket, let's talk about West Indies. Cricket West Indies then have to identify that we have a smaller pool than the rest of the world. So therefore, we need to incentivize our guys. In other words, tell them, yes, you can go and play T20 cricket, but you can't play all these matches. But in the meantime, we will pay you X amount of money. It may not reach the height of playing some of those matches, but we'll let you play in the IPL, we'll let you play in the CPL, we'll let you play maybe in one other big tournament, and the rest of the days, you are eligible to play cricket for the West Indies, and we pay you X amount of money, a little bit above the average based on your experience. And I think these guys will accept it. I don't think these guys want to be traveling all over the world every single day. They like to spend some time at home, but they like to know when they spend some time at home, let's say they were supposed to earn 100,000, let's say they get 50,000 instead. But they'll be at home. That the comfort of their home comfort will certainly make them happy. But there needs to be a compromise, not this, if you don't play regional cricket, then you can't play. You can't ask them to play regional cricket when the standard is very low, and it's better that they go and play T20 cricket, even if it's limited, where they get experience and they meet top players. So again, I think they need to adjust that rule. They've spoken about it. It appears that they may be changing along that direction. Long overdue.
Let me get back now to the passing of Mr. Claude Noel and all the tributes that have poured in since the news broke. With regards to patriotism, another word that is often used, it seems as though it's a word that is engineered from those in authority to try and whip athletes into doing their best, but also to try and whip supporters into understanding the need for their actual backing of athletes. Is it that patriotism is just a word that is used in goodwill and campaign, and the true meaning of patriotism is not utilized when it comes to sportsmen and women?
Well, I think the persons who use the word patriotism, many times they use those words to convey a belief that they understand the effort, the time, the endeavor, the sacrifices that have been made by these sportsmen and sportswomen. When it's quite contrary, they don't. So they use these words that they say are platitudes just to say that they are thankful that these men and women have contributed, but they don't really understand the effort that had been made by these persons to represent their country, to make their country well known. If you go back into time, and I know it's available now, that 1981 WBA title that he won against Gato Gonzalez, it's on the internet. Everybody's playing it right now. Of course, we played it more than 2 months ago when he was going through his period, but now it's prime news. Everybody's watching it now, watching that last round from 1981. You weren't born yet. So, I mean, so in those sort of situations, you begin to wonder, why wasn't this done before?
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I mean, gone are the days where love seemed to be the form of payment to sportsmen and women, because, as you said, the minute that something happens in a negative fashion, that's what they're remembered for. You know, that is where their contributions are. It's very unfortunate and indeed a sad situation. But, as we tend to wrap up this interview, the legacy of Claude Noel, I know you said that he's been remembered a lot for the mistakes that he's made because he's human. But now that he's moved on and all these wonderful tributes are pouring in, precisely what would his legacy be?
Well, I think his legacy will still remain that he was the first fighter from Trinidad and Tobago to win a world title. in 1981. That can never change. That can never be taken away. Of course, there's the Claude Noel Highway in Tobago. That's still there. I hope that some way, somehow in boxing, they pay tribute to him, whether it's through our sporting program, whether it's through an investment in boxing, obviously, because that's the sport that he loved. Some way, somehow, they find a way. The Boxing Board of Control, which has been ineffective for so long, the Trinidad and Tobago Boxing Association, which is silent until they want funding, that they come together and find a way to pay tribute to Claude Noel. And as we go and we look at Claude Noel, we have Leslie Tiger Stewart. He's in a similar situation. From the point of view that people remember, even though he won that title for Trinidad and Tobago, he has been looking around to get a job in boxing for more than 2 to 3 years, Ketan. He's in Trinidad and Tobago. But people remember the problems he had after boxing, and he's here in Trinidad and Tobago not being utilized. So it continues. We'll probably hear about it when he passes on, and I hope it doesn't happen now. But I'm just saying, then we'll hear all the great things about Leslie Tiger Stewart. And in his case, he won his title here in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's something else.
And Andre, very quickly before we go, I'm so sorry, but is it that we have funding for sports, like through the Ministry of Sports, for example, just to fund all these boxing, well, not just the Boxing Association, but all these sports associations, all these administrations and administrators? Is it that they are actually the ones that are receiving the bulk of the money through funding, and it's not necessarily being passed on to athletes?
The answer to that in most of the cases might be no, but in some cases is yes. And in some sports, for instance, boxing is one of those sports that when the athletes get their funding, most of the time the coaches, the respective coaches, demand, Ketan, they would demand that out of that X amount of money of funding that they get. And if they don't get it, they stop coaching.
Yeah. Well, Andre Baptiste, thank you very much for joining me this morning. It certainly is a pleasure. And for all the knowledge and experience that you've shared with us and the insights, appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Ketan. Take care. Thank you.
All the best.